Debate, reprise du débat, the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Here because Parliament is working. We're here to do our job as government, as parliamentarians, because our democracy is working. Just a short time ago, we had an election in this country where we asked Canadians how they wanted to keep fighting this pandemic. And their answer was clear. Canadians chose vaccines. They chose science. They chose to protect one another. Because Canadians know that's how we get back to the things we love. Dans les dernières semaines,
over the last few weeks, there have been demonstrations across the country, and particularly here in Ottawa. Obviously, people have the right to demonstrate. They have the right to disagree with the government and to be heard. This is a fundamental right that we will always protect and uphold as a democracy. But people do not have the right to block streets illegally, to harass their fellow citizens, people who want to go to work, who want to go to school. They don't have the right to insult those who choose to wear a mask, to get vaccinated, to be there for their fellow citizens.
Are trying to blockade our economy, our democracy, and our fellow citizens' daily lives. It has to stop. The people of Ottawa don't deserve to be harassed in their own neighborhoods. They don't deserve to be confronted with the inherent violence of a swastika flying on a street corner, or a Confederate flag, or the insults and jeers just because they're wearing a mask. That's not who Canadians are. That's not what Canadians demonstrated over the past 2 years of consistently, continually being there for each other. The people of Ottawa, indeed people across the country, deserve to have their safety respected and deserve to get their lives back. From the beginning of this demonstration, our government has been in close contact with the Mayor of Ottawa and municipal and provincial officials. So far, the RCMP has mobilized nearly 300 officers to support the Ottawa Police Services and is ready to do more. Yesterday, the City of Ottawa declared a state of emergency. We're convening a table with the relevant federal and municipal partners to further strengthen our response. The federal government will be there with whatever resources the province and the city need in this situation. Le ministre des Transports.
The Minister for Transport is working with his provincial counterparts to make sure that contraveners suffer the consequences.
Speaker, this blockade, these protesters, they're not the story of this pandemic. They are not the story of Canadians in this pandemic. From the very beginning, Canadians stepped up to be there for one another, to support their neighbors, to support their elderly, to support our frontline workers by doing the right things, by wearing masks, by getting vaccinated, by following public health restrictions. We're all tired of this pandemic. We're frustrated, we're worn down. None more worn down than our frontline health workers who've been going flat out for 2 years But everyone's tired of having to wear masks, having to follow public health restrictions. Families like mine just last week that test positive, have to follow public health rules, have to isolate themselves. Nobody wants to do that. I don't know how many conversations parents have had to have with kids about not going to birthday parties, but not getting to have sleepovers. This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians. But Canadians know the way to get through it is to continue listening to science, continuing to lean on each other, continuing to be there for each other. Les gens qui crient après.
Those who are shouting at others because they're wearing a mask do not define what it is to be the majority of Canadians, the vast majority of our country. The majority of Canadians are the millions upon millions who have been vaccinated, almost 90,000 today alone, and tens of thousands who week after week continue to receive their first dose, Mr. Speaker.
Country. Canadians step up to get their first dose of vaccinations. That is the story of the country. People who've been there for each other. Everyone's tired of COVID. But these protests are not the way to get through it. On ne devrait pas lutter les uns contre.
We shouldn't be fighting one another. We should be united to fight the virus.
One another. It's a fight against the virus. And Canadians know the tool to get through it is science, is vaccinations, is continuing to do what people have done from the very beginning. Step up for one another. Make the difficult choices. More than ever, Canadians need to continue to be there for each other, to be united. I've seen members of the opposition call for an end to the blockades. I salute that. This is a time to put national interests ahead of partisan interests. This is the time for responsible leadership. Democracy in Canada didn't happen by accident, and it won't continue without effort. It was a deliberate choice made decades and decades ago to come together, to respect one another, to be there for each other. And every generation, every decade, every day, Canadians continue to live that, choosing to support each other, choosing to do what's necessary to get through another long winter night, to get through another difficult season, to get through a pandemic. We have in this country a set of rules and laws, principles that we live by, that keep us safe, that protect us. And over the past 2 years, we've seen measures brought in to keep us safe, measures loosened when things got better. We will continue to follow public health advice. We will continue to trust science as Canadians work to get through this. That's what people expect. I know people are tired. But we've seen it through the various waves, and they're receding over the past months. These pandemic restrictions are not forever. But we have to make sure that our shared values and the idea of Canadians being there for each other, supporting one another, respecting each other, that has to be here to stay. And that's what we are all continuing to stand for, Mr. Speaker. Merci beaucoup.
Questions et commentaires.